a dagger hidden inside a map, a musical instrument filled with lead, and an iron hammer powerful enough to destroy an imperial carriage. These weapons were not carried onto a battlefield. They were used in 3 separate attempts to kill the same man, Zhang, the ruler who would become Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. One assassin came within arm's reach of him. Another entered the imperial court disguised as a musician. A third attacked the emperor's entire convoy. All 3 failed. But their failures reveal something that monuments and imperial records often hide. Behind the image of an unstoppable conqueror stood a man surrounded by enemies, haunted by the knowledge that his entire empire might depend on a single heartbeat. In the 3rd century BC, the land we now call China was divided among several rival kingdoms. This was the Warring States period. Alliances changed constantly. Armies became larger. Wars became longer and more destructive. Governments were reorganized around agriculture, taxation, military service, and conquest. Among these competing kingdoms, Qin became the most efficient war machine of them all. Its laws were strict. Its government was highly centralized. Officials were rewarded for measurable success rather than noble ancestry. Qin did not behave like a traditional kingdom simply defending its borders. It expanded like a machine designed to absorb everything in its path. Beginning in 230 BC, King Yingzheng launched a final campaign against the remaining states. Han fell first, then Zhao, Wei, Chu, Yan, and Qi followed. In 221 BC, Yingzheng declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. His government standardized writing, currency, weights, and measurements. It expanded roads, canals, and a centralized system of administration. These reforms helped shape the imperial system that later Chinese dynasties would inherit. But to the people of the defeated kingdoms, unification did not always feel like the creation of peace. It felt like the destruction of their world. Their royal families were removed. Their armies were defeated. Their traditions were placed under the authority of a distant ruler. And some people began to believe that if Qin could not be stopped by an army, perhaps it could be stopped by a single blade. In 227 BC, Yingzheng was not yet emperor. But the direction of history was already becoming clear. Qin had defeated the state of Zhao and was advancing toward the northern kingdom of Yan. The crown prince of Yan, Prince Dan, had once lived in Qin as a political hostage. The surviving accounts do not tell us everything that happened to him there. But when he returned home, Prince Dan believed that Yingzheng could not be trusted. He also understood that Yan had little chance of defeating Qin in open war. So Prince Dan searched for an assassin. The man eventually chosen was Jing. Later generations remembered Jing as a wandering swordsman. He was educated, proud, and apparently courageous. But the ancient sources do not always agree about his true motivation. He may have been driven by loyalty. He may have felt trapped by honor and obligation. Or perhaps he understood that once he accepted the mission, there was no path back. The assassination plan depended on 2 gifts that the king of Qin would find difficult to refuse. The first was a map of Dukong, a fertile region of Yan that was supposedly being surrendered to Qin. The second was the head of Fan Wuqi, a former Qin general who had fled into exile and was wanted by Yingzheng. According to the traditional account, Jing explained to Fan Wuqi that his death could create an opportunity to approach the king of Qin. Fan Wuqi accepted the plan and took his own life. It was a brutal political calculation. One man would die so that another man could stand close enough to strike the most powerful ruler of the age. Jing concealed a poisoned dagger inside the rolled map. He then entered the Qin palace with a younger companion named Qin Huang. But as they approached the throne, Qin Huang reportedly became visibly terrified. He trembled and lost his composure. Jing attempted to explain away his companion's behavior and continued alone. He presented the gifts to the king of Qin. Then he slowly unrolled the map. At the very end of the scroll, the hidden dagger appeared. Jing Ke seized the weapon and lunged toward Zhang. Most of the dramatic details of what happened next come from Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian, written roughly a century after the event. It is one of the most important historical works from ancient China. However, historians still debate which parts of the scene are exact historical details, and which parts may have been shaped by later storytelling. According to the traditional account, the royal court immediately descended into chaos. The officials inside the audience hall were unarmed because weapons were forbidden in the king's presence. Zhang attempted to draw his sword, but the sword was unusually long, making it difficult to pull from its scabbard while he was under attack. Jing Ke chased him around a pillar. The future emperor, the man whose armies had defeated entire kingdoms, was suddenly running for his life inside his own palace. Officials shouted instructions, but few were able to intervene. A court physician reportedly threw his medicine bag at Jing Ke, distracting the assassin for a brief moment. That moment may have saved the king's life. Zhang finally managed to draw his sword. He struck Jing Ke and wounded him. Realizing that his opportunity was disappearing, Jing Ke threw the dagger toward the king. It missed. Jing Ke was then surrounded and killed. The future first emperor had survived, but he had survived only after being chased around his own throne room by a man armed with a dagger hidden inside a map. The political consequences for Yan were devastating. Qin used the assassination attempt as another justification for invasion. In desperation, the king of Yan eventually ordered the death of his own son, Prince Dan. He hoped that presenting Prince Dan's head to Zhang might convince Qin to stop its advance. It did not. Yan was conquered. The assassination attempt had failed to save the kingdom. Instead, it gave Qin another reason to destroy it. But Jing Ke's death did not end the resistance. One of his closest companions was Jianli, a musician from Yan. Jianli was famous for playing an ancient instrument called the zhu. According to tradition, he played music as Jing Ke departed on his final mission. The farewell later became one of the most famous scenes in Chinese historical memory. After Yan was conquered, Jianli went into hiding. But exceptional talent can be difficult to conceal. His musical ability eventually attracted attention, and news of his performances reached Huang. The emperor summoned him to the imperial court. When Jianli's true identity was discovered, the emperor reportedly chose not to execute him immediately. Huang admired his music, but he also feared him. According to the traditional account, the emperor ordered Jianli to be blinded, believing that a blind musician would no longer be dangerous. It was a disturbing mixture of admiration and cruelty. The emperor wanted to preserve the artist, but he wanted to remove the threat hidden inside the artist. Jianli continued to perform at court. Over time, he was allowed to move closer to the emperor. Then, according to Sima Qian, Jianli secretly placed lead inside his instrument, turning it into a heavy weapon. During a performance, Huang came within striking distance. Jianli raised the instrument and swung it toward him. He missed. Jianli was captured and executed. Afterward, the emperor reportedly became even more reluctant to allow people from the conquered kingdoms to approach him. The precise details of this story cannot be independently confirmed, but the story survived because of its powerful symbolism. A blind musician had transformed art into resistance. An instrument designed to create music had become his final weapon. The third major assassination attempt came from a man who never entered the imperial palace. His name was Liang. Liang came from an aristocratic family of Han, one of the kingdoms destroyed by Qin. Unlike Jing Ke, he did not intend to approach the emperor face to face. He planned an ambush. In 218 BC, Huang was traveling across his empire on an inspection tour. These journeys displayed imperial authority. They connected the emperor with distant regions. They also reminded the defeated kingdoms that Qin's power could appear anywhere. Zhang Liang hired an exceptionally strong man and obtained a massive iron weapon. Traditional accounts describe it as weighing 120 ancient jin. The exact modern weight is uncertain because ancient measurements changed over time. But the weapon was clearly intended to destroy a carriage with a single strike. At Bolangsha, Zhang Liang and his accomplice waited for the imperial convoy. When the carriages approached, the heavy weapon was launched toward them. It smashed into one of the vehicles. But Qin Shi Huang was not inside. The attackers had struck the wrong carriage. The emperor immediately ordered a massive search for those responsible. But Zhang Liang escaped. Years later, he would become one of the most important strategists serving Liu Bang, the rebel leader who founded the Han dynasty after Qin collapsed. The man who failed to kill the first emperor would eventually help build the political order that replaced the first emperor's dynasty. 3 plots, 3 different weapons, 3 very different men. Jing approached through diplomacy. Gao Jianli approached through art. Zhang Liang attacked from concealment. Each of them believed that killing one ruler might reverse the destruction of an entire political world. But assassination depends on one enormous assumption. It assumes that history exists inside the body of a single person. Had Jing succeeded in 227 BC, Qin's conquest might have slowed, or another ruler might simply have continued it. Had Gao Jianli killed Qin Shi Huang after unification, the empire might have fallen into a succession crisis. Had Zhang Liang struck the correct carriage, rebellion might have begun earlier. But it is also possible that none of these attacks would have changed the long-term direction of history. Qin's power did not come from Ying alone. It came from armies, laws, officials, roads, agriculture, and generations of political reform. The king stood at the center of the machine, but he had not personally built every part of it. Even so, the repeated attempts on his life appear to have deepened the atmosphere of fear surrounding him. Qin Shi Huang traveled with extensive security. He sometimes concealed which carriage carried him. He searched for ways to extend his life and sent expeditions to find substances associated with immortality. Some of these accounts were written long after the events and should be treated cautiously. But together, they created the image of a ruler who had defeated every kingdom around him, yet could not defeat his own fear of death. Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BC during another imperial journey, not from a dagger, not from a musician's weapon, not from an iron hammer. His death was temporarily concealed while powerful officials arranged the succession. Then the Qin dynasty began to collapse with extraordinary speed. It ended in 206 BC, only a few years after the death of the man who had imagined that his imperial line would continue for countless generations. Yet the political system he created did not disappear. Later dynasties rejected many of Qin's harshest policies, but they preserved much of its centralized imperial structure. The Qin dynasty was brief. Its political blueprint survived for centuries. Jing, Gao Jianli, Zhang Liang, and the unnamed people who helped them are often remembered as heroes of resistance. But they can also be seen as assassins willing to gamble the future of millions of people on a single act of violence. Qin Shi Huang can be remembered as a ruthless conqueror. But he was also the architect of a political system that shaped Chinese history for more than 2,000 years. So where should history place its sympathy? With the ruler who ended generations of warfare by destroying every rival state? Or with the men who believed that killing him was the only remaining way to save the worlds he was erasing? Historical details should be cross-checked with at least 2 reliable sources before production.